He had everything money could buy, except a son who could hear him say, "I love you." Before we dive into the story, have you ever wished for just one more chance to say something you never could? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you believe love can change even the coldest heart, hit subscribe. Because what happens next? You won't believe it. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Let me take you back to a mansion on the edge of Lake Washington, where silence said everything. It was a Tuesday morning that felt like every other Tuesday in Seattle. Gray sky, light drizzle, and the smell of wet pine drifting through open windows. Ethan Ward stood in front of his kitchen window, coffee cooling in his hand. The house was too quiet. A home that big, 6 bedrooms, marble floors, walls full of screens. Shouldn't sound like a church, but it did. Across the kitchen, 6-year-old Noah sat at the table, tracing shapes in a thin layer of oatmeal. He hummed softly, not from sound but from vibration. The tablet beside him flashed cartoons with captions he couldn't read fast enough. Ethan watched, helpless. He wanted to say good morning, to hear the boy answer, but Noah's world was silent. The doctors had said the nerves in his inner ear never formed. No operation could fix it. He checked his watch, straightened his tie, and whispered out of habit, "I'll be back early." Noah didn't look up. Lucia Ramirez entered quietly from the laundry hall, carrying a basket of warm towels. She moved with practiced ease, folding as she walked. Her dark hair was pulled into a low braid, and her uniform was faded from years of washing. "Good morning, Mr. Ward," she said softly. Ethan nodded without meeting her eyes. "He hasn't eaten." "I'll try," Lucia replied. She set the basket down and crouched beside Noah. She tapped his shoulder gently, signing, "Eat, please. Pancakes later if you finish." Noah's eyes brightened. He nodded, picked up his spoon, and took a bite. Lucia smiled. A small, tired smile that held warmth anyway. Ethan noticed the exchange. He hesitated, as if wanting to thank her, then simply said, "I'll be late tonight." Lucia looked up. "Should I keep him up till you get home?" "No, don't." His tone was sharper than he meant. He adjusted his cufflink, grabbed his keys, and walked toward the garage. Outside, rain misted the driveway. The black electric car waited under the carport. As he slid in, his phone buzzed. Messages from investors, board members, journalists. The world he could control was right there in his hand. But the one thing that mattered most was the one thing that wouldn't obey. Inside the house, Lucia wiped the table and hummed an old Spanish lullaby. She'd sung it years ago to a baby girl whose face still lived in her dreams. Noah tapped her sleeve and pointed to the window. Rain streaked the glass. He pressed his palm against it, feeling the cold. Lucia nodded and signed, "Rain talks too." He tilted his head, curious. She took his little hand, placed it near the sill where the drops drummed, and mouthed, "Listen with your skin." Noah laughed, soundless, pure. He closed his eyes and felt the rhythm. That laugh made something shift in her chest every time. By afternoon, the sky cleared. Lucia loaded fresh sheets into the upstairs rooms. She passed the door that was always locked, the one that belonged to her, Ethan's late wife, Dr. Maya Ward. No one spoke about her, but her presence filled every hallway. Sometimes, when Lucia dusted the shelves in the den, she found little reminders. An old mug with "Code Like a Girl" printed on it, a photograph of Maya and Ethan at a tech gala, smiling like a different species of human, alive, unbroken. Lucia had seen grief before, but Ethan's was something else. His pain had turned to glass, clear, sharp, untouchable. At 4 p.m., Noah sat on the living room rug, building towers out of wooden blocks. Lucia was on her knees beside him, helping stack the higher pieces. She pulled out her phone and opened a cartoon app with sign language characters. Noah watched with wide eyes, mimicking the shapes. "Good," she said, signing "Good boy." He grinned, signing back "Good Lucia." Her laughter filled the room. It startled her a little. How long it had been since she'd laughed like that. Just then, the front door opened. Ethan returned early. He froze in the doorway, watching them. Lucia didn't notice. Noah was showing her how to spell his name with his hands. Slow and proud. Ethan's jaw tightened. Something in him wanted to join, but habit built walls faster than desire could climb them. Lucia finally saw him. She stood quickly. "Mr. Ward, you're home early." Ethan looked at his son. "Dinner. I was just starting it," she said. Noah tugged Ethan's sleeve. He signed a phrase that Lucia had just taught him. "Dad. Play." Ethan's chest tightened. He knew what it meant. Lucia had been teaching him more sign words lately, but he couldn't respond. He only patted Noah's shoulder and said, "Maybe later." Noah's smile faded. Lucia watched, heart heavy. She wanted to say something, to bridge that quiet space between them. But she'd learned long ago where her voice didn't belong. After dinner, the house dimmed to its evening stillness. Lucia gathered laundry, humming softly again. Ethan sat alone in his office, the glow of multiple screens reflecting off his face. Lines of code filled one monitor, stock numbers another, news alerts scrolling below. Yet the only sound he truly heard was the echo of his son's silence. He opened a drawer, pulled out a framed photo. Maya stood there, pregnant, laughing. Behind her was the prototype lab she'd built, the same lab sealed upstairs. He whispered, "You promised he'd be fine." Outside, thunder rumbled across Lake Washington. But what Ethan didn't know was that the promise Maya made had never been broken, only forgotten. The next morning, Lucia walked to the bus stop before sunrise. She carried her umbrella in one hand, a thermos in the other. Pickup truck passed, splashing her shoes. She laughed it off. At the stop, she found a small notice pinned to the post. Community job fair, free childcare. She tore the corner with the phone number and slipped it into her pocket. Her landlord had raised rent again. She'd been thinking of leaving the Ward estate once Noah started school full-time. But every time she imagined saying goodbye, her heart twisted. The bus arrived, brake squealing. She climbed aboard, thinking about the boy's laugh, the way he felt rain with his palms. Back at the mansion, Ethan was running late. Noah had spilled milk on his shirt, and Lucia was helping clean him up when Ethan rushed in, phone to his ear. "I said move the launch to next week. No, not later. I'll be in the office in 20 minutes. Lucia handed him a towel. "Careful." Too late. Noah reached for Ethan's briefcase, dropping papers everywhere. Ethan snapped, "Noah!" The boy froze. He couldn't hear the shout, but he saw the anger. His face crumpled. Lucia knelt quickly, signing "not mad." "Accident. It's okay." Ethan exhaled hard, guilt flashing through his eyes. He crouched beside them. "Buddy, hey!" He touched Noah's cheek, unsure what to say. Lucia guided his hands gently. She signed sorry and nodded for him to repeat. Ethan hesitated, then copied her. "Sorry." Noah looked at him, confusion turning to a shy smile. Lucia caught the moment. Tiny, fragile, beautiful. That night, after Noah went to bed, Lucia stayed late to fold laundry in the upstairs hall. A fuse had blown earlier, leaving one light flickering. She opened a storage door to check the breaker panel. Inside, stacked boxes lined the walls, old tech parts, labeled binders, dusty notebooks. She noticed one box tucked behind others with Project Aurora, MW, written across it. She paused. Maya's initials. Curiosity prickled. She brushed off the dust, lifted the lid. Inside lay a small metallic device, no bigger than a coin, with wires spiraling like veins of silver. Next to it was a folded letter. Lucia reached for it just as she heard footsteps behind her. "Lucia!" Ethan's voice. She jumped, nearly dropping the box. He frowned. "That room's off limits." "I'm sorry, I was just... the light was..." He stepped closer, seeing the open lid, the letter in her hand. His eyes went cold. "What is that?" he asked quietly. "I don't know. It has her initials." He took the box from her, jaw tightening. "Don't ever touch these things again." "I didn't mean." "Just go." Lucia lowered her gaze and left. But as she walked down the stairs, she couldn't shake the image of the device. Small, delicate, humming faintly under her fingertips like it wanted to speak. She didn't know it yet, but that tiny device would change everything. The boy, the father, and the life she thought was never hers to touch. Rain returned the next morning, light but steady. Lucia moved quietly through the kitchen, making oatmeal for Noah and packing his lunch for therapy. She tried not to think about the box from last night, the way the silver device pulsed faintly when she touched it. But curiosity has a way of whispering louder than reason. Ethan hadn't come down yet. His office light was still on from the night before. She knew he'd stayed up working, or staring at those boxes. When Ethan finally appeared, he looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie missing. Lucia poured him coffee. "You didn't sleep?" He shook his head. "No. Meetings later." His tone was clipped, but his hands trembled slightly. Lucia noticed. She didn't ask. Noah ran in, wearing his favorite red hoodie with dinosaurs on it. He carried a small stuffed elephant, the same one Maya had bought before he was born. Lucia smiled. "Ready for therapy?" she signed. He nodded. Ethan knelt to fix Noah's hood. For a moment, he just looked at him. The same brown eyes as his mother, the same quiet spirit. He whispered, "You're stronger than both of us." Lucia saw his lips move, even if Noah couldn't. They left soon after. Later that day, Lucia was dusting the upstairs hall again when she noticed something strange. The storage room door, the one Ethan had locked last night, was slightly open. She froze. A light flickered inside. "Noah?" she called softly, but the boy was downstairs with his nanny. Lucia hesitated, then stepped in. The air smelled faintly of metal and ozone, like rain on copper. On the workbench, the small device from before was gone. But a drawer stood open, filled with other prototypes. Wires, lenses, microchips, and a thick notebook labeled Aurora. Neural Sound Bridge, Ward. She turned a page. Handwritten sketches, notes, and equations covered the paper. At the bottom of one sheet, a message was written in softer pen strokes. "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. Tell Ethan he wasn't wrong to hope." Lucia's throat tightened. She reached for the next page. "Lucia." Ethan's voice came from behind her, quiet but sharp. She turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, his face pale, his expression unreadable. "I told you not to come in here. I heard a noise. I thought maybe." He walked forward, eyes locked on the notebook in her hands. "That's private." Lucia set it down carefully. "I wasn't trying to invade." "Then what were you doing?" His tone hardened, but beneath it was something else. Fear. Lucia hesitated. "Mr. Ward, there's something you should see." She pointed to the note. Ethan read it, jaw tightening, breath shallow. His wife's handwriting. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then he snapped the notebook shut. "This doesn't concern you, sir." "Lucia." His voice broke slightly. "Please, just go." She left, heart pounding. But as she closed the door, she saw him sink into the chair, the notebook trembling in his hands. Downstairs, Noah sat on the floor playing with a set of light-up blocks. When Lucia walked in, he looked up and smiled. She knelt beside him, still shaken. "You okay, sweetheart?" He nodded, then pointed to the ceiling. "Signing Dad?" Lucia smiled faintly. Working, she signed back. Noah's blocks flickered, flashing colors across the carpet. The pattern reminded Lucia of the device she'd seen. Soft pulses, rhythmical, almost alive. She frowned, curious. Hours later, when the house quieted for the night, Lucia sat at the kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea. Rain ticked against the glass. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Carla, who worked nights at a clinic. "Still at the Ward house?" "Yeah." "Strange night. Found something of his wife's. Looks like medical tech. Careful, loose. People like him don't like you touching their past." Lucia sighed, pocketing the phone. She didn't want trouble. She just couldn't stop thinking about the message Maya had left behind. "You weren't wrong to hope." "Hope for what?" The next afternoon, Ethan left for a board meeting downtown. The mansion felt bigger without him. Lucia was organizing the playroom when Noah toddled in holding something shiny. "Hey, what's that?" she asked, kneeling. He held up the small metallic device. Lucia's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" He pointed upstairs. She took it gently from his hands. Felt warm, almost pulsing again. She turned it over, 2 small contact points, a power light. Noah watched her closely, eyes curious. Lucia pressed the side switch. The light blinked, faint but steady. A soft hum filled the air, too low to notice unless you were paying attention. Noah flinched slightly, then smiled. He reached for the sound, eyes wide, as if sensing it through vibration. Lucia's heart raced. "Can you feel that?" she whispered, signing feel. He nodded fast. Just then, the front door opened. Ethan's voice echoed through the hall. "Lucia." She turned off the device and hid it behind her back. "In here," she called. He entered, removing his coat. His eyes landed on Noah, then on Lucia's trembling hands. "What's going on?" "Nothing." He was just, "What are you holding?" Her silence gave her away. He stepped forward, jaw tense. "Is that?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw what it was. "The device," he whispered. "You took it." "I didn't take it. He found it upstairs." "I didn't even know." Ethan snatched it from her hand. His eyes burned with a mix of fear and memory. "You shouldn't have touched this." Lucia swallowed hard. "Mr. Ward, I think it responded to him. He felt something." "That's impossible." "No, really. It vibrated." Ethan turned away. "You don't understand. This thing killed his mother." Lucia froze. "What?" He exhaled shakily. It was her final project. She thought she could rebuild auditory pathways using nanofibers. She tested it on herself when she was pregnant. She said it was safe. Lucia's eyes widened. She did it to help him? She believed she could fix everything, Ethan said quietly. She died the day he was born. I buried the project with her. Silence hung between them. Lucia whispered, "Maybe she wasn't wrong." He looked at her sharply. "Don't romanticize it. She risked her life. She also left you that note." Ethan's expression broke for a moment, the mask slipping. "That note ruined me." Lucia stepped closer, softer now. "Maybe it's not the end of her story." He met her eyes, steady, searching, but then turned away, his voice low. "You don't know what loss does to a man." Lucia held his gaze. "I do." The words hit him harder than she meant them to. He looked at her, really looked for the first time. "What did you lose?" he asked quietly. Lucia hesitated. Her throat tightened. "Someone I couldn't save." Neither spoke after that. That night, Ethan placed the device on his desk, staring at it under the lamp's glow. His fingers traced the engraved initials. MW. He powered it on. The same faint hum filled the room. For a brief second, he could almost hear her voice. "Don't be afraid to try again, Ethan." He shut it off, chest tight. Downstairs, Lucia sat beside Noah as he drifted to sleep. She brushed his hair gently, watching his small chest rise and fall. She whispered, "You're going to change the world, little one." Outside, the rain turned heavier. But what neither of them realized was that the device had already changed something. Something deep inside the boy they both loved in different ways. The next morning, Ethan came downstairs early, wearing no tie, just a sweater and jeans. Lucia was surprised to see him in the kitchen. "Coffee?" she asked. He nodded, almost awkwardly. "Thanks." Noah ran in, carrying his stuffed elephant again. He waved at Ethan, signing good morning. Ethan smiled faintly. "Good morning, buddy." Lucia watched as Ethan crouched down, trying to sign back clumsily. "Good morning." Noah laughed, clapping his hands. Lucia's heart warmed. Maybe something had shifted after all. But peace never lasts long in houses built on secrets. That evening, while Ethan was on a video call in his study, Lucia walked past the door and heard him whisper into the phone, "If the prototype still works, we might have a chance." Her pulse quickened. He wasn't talking to a colleague. His voice was too personal, too fragile. Maybe to Maya. Maybe to himself. Lucia didn't know what it meant. But one thing was clear. The past wasn't done with them yet. Hope had returned to that house. And hope, she would soon learn, is a dangerous thing to awaken. The next week passed quietly, too quietly. Ethan buried himself in meetings and emails, pretending the device didn't exist. Lucia stayed out of his way, though her thoughts kept circling back to that strange humming sound and the way Noah had reacted to it. She told herself to forget it. She told herself it wasn't her place. But every time Noah laughed, she saw the possibility of something more. One gray morning, the sound of rain on glass filled the kitchen again. Lucia poured Noah's cereal and turned on the light. "Want strawberries today?" she signed. He nodded, smiling sleepily. Ethan entered moments later, holding a travel mug. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his eyes tired but softer than usual. Lucia gave him a small smile. "Morning, Mr. Ward." He looked at her, almost like he wanted to respond, but just nodded. Noah signed Dad. "Pancakes." Ethan chuckled. "That's your favorite word lately." Lucia translated. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You teaching him breakfast words now?" She shrugged. "They make him happy." For a second, Ethan's expression warmed. Then his phone buzzed. He turned away. Lucia felt the distance return. Later that day, Lucia took Noah to his speech therapy session downtown. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining. On the drive, she kept thinking about Ethan. How one moment he looked ready to care, and the next he hid behind walls of silence, just like his son once did. At the therapy center, the specialist tried a new vibration device that connected to music. Noah tapped along, smiling, feeling rhythm instead of sound. The therapist said, "He's improving in recognition. He feels tone through vibration faster than most kids." Lucia's eyes lit up. "He's special." The woman smiled. "Very. You work with him a lot." Lucia nodded. "Every day. Keep doing what you're doing. It's working." That night, when Lucia returned, Ethan was still in his office. Through the glass wall, she saw him sitting in the dark, the small silver device on the desk beside a photo of Maya. He stared at it for a long time, his fingers tracing the edges, but he never turned it on. Lucia knocked softly. "Mr. Ward." He looked up, startled. "Yes. I made dinner. I'm not hungry. You should eat." He sighed. "Lucia, you don't have to worry about me." "I'm not," she said gently. "I'm worried about him." Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Noah's fine." "Is he?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "He needs you," she said. "Not the version of you that runs a company. The one who sits on the floor and builds towers with him." Ethan looked down. "I don't know how to be that person anymore." "Then start small," she said. "Maybe with breakfast words." Her smile caught him off guard. For a moment he almost smiled back. But healing never comes easy for those who've taught themselves not to feel. The next morning, Ethan decided to stay home for once. Lucia found him sitting on the floor with Noah, stacking Legos. She paused at the doorway, surprised and quietly touched. Ethan looked up, half embarrassed. He said, "Blue in sign language." Lucia grinned. "He did? That's great." Noah pointed at the tower proudly. Ethan chuckled. "He's bossy." Lucia knelt beside them. "He learned that from you." Ethan laughed softly, shaking his head. For a moment it felt almost like a family. By afternoon, the mood shifted again. Ethan got a call from the board, bad news about a product recall. The tension returned to his voice, the stiffness to his posture. He stormed upstairs, shutting himself in the office. Lucia watched from below, heart heavy. Noah noticed too. He sat on the bottom stair, clutching his toy elephant, eyes sad. Lucia joined him, signing he's okay. "Work." But the boy shook his head. He didn't believe it. That night, Lucia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the device. What if Maya really had found something that could help Noah? What if it wasn't an accident, but a breakthrough? She got up quietly, went to the kitchen for water, and stopped when she saw a soft glow from under Ethan's office door. He was still awake. Curiosity tugged at her, but she forced herself to walk away. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford to care this much. But she did. The following day, while Ethan was at the company, Lucia decided to clean the office. She always avoided it before, but today, she wanted to bring a little order back into that space. She dusted the shelves, wiped the desk, and paused when she saw the notebook. Maya's. It was open this time. On one page, a drawing of the neural bridge device was labeled, "Activate through touch, sound through pulse." Below that, another line, "For Noah, so he can feel what love sounds like." Lucia pressed a hand over her heart. She closed the notebook and whispered, "Maybe you still can." That evening, Ethan came home early. His mood was heavy. Lucia could tell something had gone wrong at work. "Rough day?" she asked gently. "Investors," he muttered. "They want to pull funding." "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "I'll fix it." Lucia tilted her head. "You fix everything? That's my job." She hesitated. "And the things you can't fix?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "I pretend they don't exist." Lucia nodded slowly. "That's a lonely way to live." He didn't answer. Later that night, Noah couldn't sleep. Lucia found him sitting on his bed, holding his elephant, tears in his eyes. She signed, "What's wrong?" He signed, "Dad mad?" Lucia shook her head. "No. Work." He still looked unsure. She sat beside him. "He loves you, Noah, even when he doesn't show it." Noah reached up and touched her face, then signed, "Love, Lucia." Her eyes filled. She hugged him close. "Love you too, baby." She didn't see Ethan standing in the hallway, watching. His expression softened, guilt flickering in his eyes. The next morning, Ethan joined them for breakfast again. He looked calmer. "Morning," Lucia said. "Morning." He glanced at Noah. "Buddy, pancakes?" Noah grinned and signed yes. Ethan laughed. "I know that one." Lucia smiled, pouring coffee. Felt peaceful again. Fragile, but real. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. He frowned. "I have to go in." Lucia's shoulders dropped. He hesitated at the door. "Lucia." "Yes. Thank you for helping him." She met his eyes. "It's easy to help someone who wants to smile." He nodded and left. But smiles can hide storms. And the one heading for this house was already on its way. That evening, a courier arrived with a small package. It was addressed to Ethan but marked with Maya's old research lab seal. Lucia accepted it, puzzled. She placed it on his desk, unable to resist glancing at the label, "Aurora Sequence, Test Recordings." Her hands trembled. Maybe these were the missing pieces of Maya's work. She turned to leave, but her sleeve brushed the power switch on the small device. The light blinked on. A faint hum filled the air. Upstairs, Noah sat up in bed, eyes wide. He felt it again, the soft vibration he remembered. He climbed out of bed, following the sound down the hall. When he reached the office door, he placed his hand on the wood and smiled. He didn't know it, but something inside him was changing. Pride is a liar, and theirs was about to cost them everything. The next morning, the house smelled like rain and cinnamon. Lucia was baking muffins for Noah's school fundraiser when Ethan came downstairs in jeans and a hoodie, a rare sight. He poured coffee and leaned against the counter. "You're up early." Lucia smiled. "You said Noah likes cinnamon." "He does." He hesitated. "Thanks." It was small, but something had softened between them. The kind of quiet peace that grows when two people stop fighting the silence. At breakfast, Noah danced around the kitchen, humming without sound. Lucia signed, "Happy?" He nodded, eyes bright. Ethan watched him with a rare smile. "He seems lighter." Lucia nodded. "He's been sleeping better." Ethan frowned. "Did you change something in his routine?" She hesitated. "Not really, just more play." He looked thoughtful but didn't press further. That evening, Ethan's sister Margot arrived unexpectedly. Sharp suit, sharper words. She ran the household finances and had never approved of Lucia. "You still here?" she asked flatly. Lucia wiped her hands on a towel. "Good evening, Ms. Ward." Margot eyed her. "I thought Ethan was hiring new staff." "I wasn't told that," Lucia said calmly. Ethan entered the kitchen then, loosening his tie. "Margot, enough." "She's overstepping," Margot said. "It's not her job to be a mother to that child." Ethan's voice cooled. "She's helping." "Helping or replacing?" Margot's words cut deep. "You know how this looks." Lucia froze. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Margot," he said, voice low. "If you can't be kind, leave." Margot sighed dramatically, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret mixing family and staff." She stormed out. The door slammed. Lucia stared at the floor. "I'm sorry." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong." But she could tell his mind was racing. Later that night, Ethan stood by Noah's bed, watching him sleep. Lucia lingered in the hallway. "She's right, you know," Ethan said quietly. "People talk." Lucia swallowed. "Let them." He turned, surprised. "You think I care about gossip?" she said. "That boy needs love. That's all I'm giving him." Ethan looked at her for a long time. His expression softened. "You're good with him." She smiled faintly. "He's easy to love." Something unspoken passed between them, warm and careful. The next morning, Ethan got a call that changed everything. His sister had suspended all household staff contracts, claiming restructuring. Lucia's job was terminated effective immediately. Ethan argued for hours, but Margot had full control of the estate accounts. When he told Lucia, she stood frozen in the kitchen. "Fired?" she whispered. "I'll fix it," he said quickly. "You won't lose your job." But she shook her head. "It's fine. I knew this day would come." Noah walked in, holding her apron. "Lucia." She knelt, tears threatening. "I have to go for a while," she signed. Noah's face crumpled. He clung to her neck, refusing to let go. Ethan's heart twisted. "Please," Noah signed, tears streaming. Lucia's voice cracked. "Shoo, baby. I'll be back. Okay?" She looked up at Ethan, desperate. "Don't let him forget me." Ethan's throat ached. "I couldn't if I tried." That night, silence filled the house again, the kind that hurt. Noah refused to eat. He sat by the window, waiting. Ethan tried everything, games, videos, songs he couldn't hear. Nothing worked. By midnight, Noah was still awake, crying softly into his elephant toy. Ethan called Margot. "He's not eating. He's not sleeping. This isn't working." "She'll get over it," Margot said coldly. "So will he." Ethan slammed the phone down. "You don't know anything about him." The next morning, he made a decision. Lucia was at her small apartment on the south side of the city, folding laundry and trying not to cry. The rent notice sat on the table beside a photo of her daughter, the one she'd lost years ago. A knock startled her. She opened the door to find Ethan and Noah standing there. Noah ran straight into her arms, signing home. Lucia laughed through tears. "You found me?" Ethan smiled weakly. "He refused to eat until I brought him." Lucia hugged Noah tight. "You're supposed to be sleeping, little one." Ethan looked around the small apartment, humble, worn, but full of warmth. "Margot's furious," he said quietly. Lucia sighed. "She's not wrong. I cross lines." "Lines are just walls people build to stay lonely," he said. Their eyes met. Something in her chest shifted. She saw it then, the fracture in his armor, and it terrified her. Ethan offered her a deal. Come back, but not as staff, as Noah's full-time caregiver. Personal contract, separate from Margot's control. Lucia hesitated. "That would cause trouble." "I can handle trouble," he said softly. "Can you?" She smiled. "I've been handling it my whole life." The next few weeks brought strange peace. Lucia moved back into the guest house on the property. Every morning, she walked with Noah by the lake behind the mansion, feeding ducks and skipping stones. Ethan joined sometimes, trading phone calls for quiet moments. He started helping with homework, learning sign language slowly. Lucia taught him small phrases. Thank you, sorry, love you. He practiced late at night, muttering words to his reflection. One chilly Saturday, they all went to a community fair downtown. It was Ethan's idea. Lucia couldn't believe it, him at a public event, surrounded by people. Noah held both their hands as they walked past food stalls and music. A band played on stage, the beat heavy through the speakers. Lucia felt Noah's grip tighten. He could feel the rhythm through the ground. He started to dance. Ethan and Lucia stared, amazed. Lucia whispered, "He feels the music." Ethan smiled, tears welling. "He really does." They both knelt beside him, laughing as he moved with joy only a child could carry. People stopped to watch. For once, Ethan didn't care who saw. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, Lucia stood on the porch. The moon reflected over the lake like broken glass. Ethan joined her, hands in his pockets. "You were right," he said quietly. "He's better with you here." Lucia smiled. "He's better with you here." He chuckled softly. "Maybe both." They stood in silence for a while, the air cool and clean. Lucia turned to him. "Do you ever stop blaming yourself?" He looked out at the water. "Some nights. But then I remember how I failed her." "You didn't fail her," Lucia said. "You loved her. That's not failure." He nodded slowly. "She believed in things I couldn't. I shut her lab down because I thought it killed her. But maybe I just couldn't handle hope anymore." Lucia placed a hand on his arm. "Hope isn't dangerous, Ethan. It's heavy. But it's the only thing that keeps us breathing." He met her gaze, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. And for the first time, she wondered if hope wasn't just for his son, but for both of them. Days later, Noah's doctor called with news. A new research program in Portland was testing advanced neural implants for children born deaf. Ethan looked at Lucia, heart racing. "This could be it," he said. "Maybe it's time." Lucia smiled. "Then let's go." The doctor scheduled a consultation. They packed that weekend. Lucia felt nervous but proud. For the first time, they were doing it together. As they drove south, rain followed them down the highway. Noah watched trees blur past, smiling as Lucia signed stories about clouds that turned into dragons. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, watching them both. Something in his chest loosened. For years, he'd filled silence with work. Now silence felt like peace. They stopped at a diner off I-5 for lunch. It was one of those old roadside places with red booths, the smell of coffee and bacon in the air. Lucia laughed. "Feels like a movie." Ethan smiled. "I don't do diners often." "Well," she said, "you're missing out." Noah dipped fries in ketchup, proud of the mess he was making. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't rush, didn't check his phone. He just was. Lucia noticed. "You're different when you slow down." He looked at her. "You make it easy to." Her heart skipped. She turned away, pretending to check on Noah. They reached Portland by sunset. The hospital was modern, full of light. Ethan looked nervous. Lucia squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she said. "Whatever happens, he's already come so far." Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on his son. What they didn't know was that healing always comes with a price, and soon the past would demand to be heard. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Tell me what happened. The next morning, the hospital smelled like disinfectant and new beginnings. Lucia helped Noah change into his small hospital gown. Ethan filled out forms, his hands steady but pale. A nurse walked in, cheerful but rushed. "We'll start prep soon. Dr. Myers will come by for consent." Lucia nodded, but Ethan barely heard her. He was reading the fine print: risk factors, recovery time, side effects. His throat tightened. He looked at Noah, playing quietly with a toy car on the blanket. "What if this doesn't work?" Ethan whispered. Lucia stepped closer. "Then we keep trying. Together." He met her eyes and nodded, though fear still shadowed his face. Hours later, Noah was wheeled into testing. Lucia sat beside Ethan in the waiting area, both pretending to read magazines. Neither spoke. When the doctor finally appeared, he smiled gently. He's doing great. The scans look promising. We'll do one more round before surgery. Lucia exhaled. Ethan closed his eyes, whispering thanks. As the doctor walked away, Lucia noticed the framed quote on the wall. Hope is the quietest form of courage. She thought about how true that was. For Noah, for Ethan, for herself. That night, they stayed in a hotel downtown, nothing fancy, just close to the hospital. Lucia tucked Noah in, humming softly while Ethan sat by the window, laptop open but untouched. Do you ever miss her? Lucia asked quietly. Ethan looked out at the city lights. Every day. She was the reason I believed in things. After she died, I just stopped. Lucia sat beside him. She'd be proud. Of you. Of him. He shook his head. I didn't protect her. She made a choice to bring life into this world. That's not on you. He turned toward her then, eyes raw. You talk like someone who's lost, too. Lucia hesitated. I have. He waited. She looked down at her hands. My daughter, she said softly. Her name was Maria. She was 5. We crossed the border from Texas one summer, and she didn't make it. Ethan froze. Lucia swallowed hard. A truck overturned. I was hurt, she was gone. After that, I couldn't go home, couldn't move forward. I just kept working. The room felt heavy with shared silence. Ethan reached for her hand. Slowly. Lucia, She shook her head, blinking back tears. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He didn't let go of her hand. She'd be proud of you, he said quietly. You kept going. Lucia smiled faintly. I found a boy who reminded me what love feels like. Ethan's throat tightened. You gave him that, Lucia. You gave me that. The next morning, the doctor handed them something unexpected. An old research folder. These designs, we found them in our system under your late wife's name, he said to Ethan. It looks like she'd been working on an early prototype of this implant. Brilliant work. Ethan stared at the pages, stunned. Lucia watched his face pale. She designed this? He whispered. Yes, the doctor said. It's remarkable. She must have been close to a breakthrough before she passed. After he left, Ethan sank into a chair, trembling. All this time, he murmured. I thought her work killed her, but it was the thing that could have saved him. Lucia knelt beside him. She was trying to give him a gift, Ethan. You can still finish what she started. He looked at her, grief and gratitude mixing. You found the device. She must have trusted you for a reason. Lucia shook her head. I just cleaned the room. She's the reason we're here. But sometimes, truth doesn't heal. It breaks everything open first. Back in Seattle a week later, Lucia stayed by Noah's side as the surgery date approached. The house buzzed with quiet tension. Margot showed up again, storming into the kitchen. You went behind my back? She snapped at Ethan. You took that woman to another state? Ethan straightened. I took my son to a doctor. Lucia is part of this family now. Margot scoffed. Family? She's an employee. Lucia stood tall. I'm whatever Noah needs me to be. Margot turned to Ethan. She's manipulating you. Can't you see it? She found something your wife left behind, and suddenly she's your savior. Ethan's voice hardened. Enough. You're blinded by guilt, Margot said. If your wife could see this, she'd. Don't. His voice cracked. Don't use her against me. Margot froze, shocked by his tone. I spent years building walls, Ethan said. Lucia didn't tear them down. She walked through them. Because she cares. That's more than I can say for you. Margot stared at him, speechless. Then she turned on her heel and left. Lucia stood still, heart pounding. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. He looked at her. Yes, I did. That night, Ethan found Lucia in the library. She was holding the old folder of research, tracing the handwriting on the pages. She wrote your name here, Lucia said quietly, showing him a note in the margin. If anything happens to me, tell Ethan to trust Lucia. She knows. Ethan's breath caught. She. She knew you? Lucia nodded slowly. I met her once years ago, at a clinic. She helped me when I was sick. She never told me her name, but I never forgot her kindness. I didn't realize who she was until after I started working here. Ethan stared, disbelief turning to awe. All this time, he said, voice breaking. You were meant to find us. Lucia's eyes filled with tears. I think she wanted us to finish what she started. The truth had finally come to light, but the cost of love was about to be tested. The night before surgery, Lucia couldn't sleep. She walked to the lake behind the house, the air cool and quiet. Ethan joined her, barefoot in the wet grass. He handed her a mug of coffee. I couldn't sleep either. They stood side by side, watching the water move. She used to love this spot, he said softly. She'd bring her laptop out here and talk to the baby. Said he kicked whenever she played music. Lucia smiled. He still does that when he feels rhythm. Ethan laughed quietly. Then he turned serious. If this surgery works, it'll be because of you. Lucia shook her head. Because of her. And you. He looked at her for a long time, the kind of look that feels like a question and an answer all at once. You saved us, he whispered. Lucia blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. Maybe we saved each other. The next morning, the sun rose over Lake Washington like gold spilling over the water. They drove to the hospital in silence, hands brushing once, just enough to feel the warmth. In the waiting room, Ethan knelt in front of Noah. Hey, buddy, he signed. You ready? Noah smiled and signed back. I'm brave. Lucia's heart swelled. Ethan hugged him tight. I love you, he whispered. Even though Noah couldn't hear him yet, Lucia placed a hand on both their shoulders. He will soon. Hours passed. Finally, the surgeon appeared, removing his mask with a tired smile. The operation went well. He'll need rest, but the implant is stable. We'll test sound response in a few days. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Lucia covered her mouth, crying quietly. They went in to see Noah, pale, sleeping but peaceful. Ethan touched his son's hair, whispering, You did it, kid. Lucia stood beside him, holding his arm. So did you. He turned to her. Lucia, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, she said softly. Just promise me one thing. Anything. When he hears you for the first time, tell him something that matters. Ethan smiled, eyes wet. I already know what I'll say. They stayed in the hospital for 3 nights. On the last one, while Noah slept, Ethan walked Lucia to the hallway. You could leave now, he said quietly. Start over. You've done more than enough. Lucia looked at him, surprised. You want me to go? He shook his head. No, I just don't want you to feel trapped here. I don't, she said simply. This is where I belong. Ethan exhaled. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, she said, smiling gently. But you deserve a second chance. As they returned to the room, Noah stirred. He reached for Lucia's hand. Signing home soon? Yes, she whispered. Home soon. Ethan brushed his son's hair back and looked at Lucia. Home. The word meant something new now. But love isn't tested by quiet moments. It's tested by the storms that follow. And theirs was coming. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beep of monitors. Noah lay sleeping, bandage wrapped around his small ear. Lucia sat beside him, reading a children's book in a whisper he couldn't hear. Yet, Ethan stood by the window, looking out at the parking lot lights. He hadn't slept in days. When will they test it? Lucia asked. Tomorrow morning, he said. They'll activate the device then. She smiled. He's ready. Ethan nodded, but his eyes stayed distant. That night, as Lucia stepped into the hallway for coffee, she overheard 2 nurses whispering. Did you hear what happened to the ward kid? The father funded the trial himself. No kidding. They said the implant wasn't cleared yet. Lucia froze. She went back to the room, heart pounding. Ethan, she said. What did they mean? The implant's not cleared. He looked startled. It's experimental. Experimental. Her voice shook. "You didn't tell me that." "I didn't want to scare you," he said quickly. "It was the only way to get him in the program." Lucia stepped back. "So you took a risk with his life? Without telling me?" "I'm his father," he said, voice rising. "It was my call." Lucia's hands trembled. "You're not the only one who loves him." The room went silent. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "But it's true," she whispered. "He's mine too, in a way." He turned away. "You're just the maid, Lucia. Don't forget that." The words hit like glass breaking. Lucia's breath caught. "After everything?" He closed his eyes, guilt already heavy. "I didn't mean." She shook her head. "Yes, you did." Then she walked out, her steps quiet but final. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He replayed her face in his mind. The hurt, the disbelief. He hated himself for it. When morning came, Noah's doctor entered, smiling. "We're ready for activation." Lucia wasn't there. Ethan sat beside Noah, heart racing as the doctor switched on the device. "Okay, Noah," the doctor said gently. "Can you hear this?" A soft tone filled the air. Noah blinked. His lips parted. Ethan leaned closer. "Buddy, can you hear me?" Noah's eyes filled with tears. Slowly he nodded. Ethan's own tears came fast. "You hear me?" Noah smiled, signing daddy. "Yes," Ethan whispered, voice shaking. "It's me." The doctor smiled. "He's responding well." But even as joy filled the room, Ethan's chest ached. Lucia wasn't there to see it. Hours later, Ethan called her. Straight to voicemail. He tried again and again. Finally, he drove to her apartment. Empty. The landlord said she'd left that morning. No forwarding address. He stood there in the hallway, holding the necklace she'd left behind on the counter. A small silver cross. His phone buzzed. Margot. He almost ignored it but answered anyway. "You did it," she said. "The surgery worked. Congratulations." He sighed. "It wasn't me. It was Lucia." "Lucia." Margot scoffed. "She's gone. Maybe it's for the best. That woman brought too much trouble." Ethan's voice hardened. "She brought my son back to life." Then he hung up. That evening, back at the mansion, Noah ran through the living room, laughing, really laughing, as he tried to mimic the sounds he heard. "Lucia," he called. The word uneven but beautiful. Ethan froze. He knelt. "What did you say?" Noah tried again, pointing at the door. "Lucia." Ethan's heart broke open. "She's not here, buddy." Noah frowned. "Find." Ethan closed his eyes. "I'm trying." Sometimes love isn't lost. It's just waiting for you to admit you need it back. Days passed. The press caught wind of the miracle. Reporters parked outside the gate. They called Ethan a hero, a visionary father. But every time he looked at the headlines, he felt sick. Lucia's absence filled every corner of the house. Noah would sit by the window every evening, signing wait. Ethan didn't know how to tell him that waiting might not be enough. A week later, Ethan's assistant handed him a sealed envelope. This was dropped at the gate. No return address. He opened it. Inside was a letter, written in neat, careful handwriting. "Ethan, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. You were right about one thing. I crossed lines. But not out of ambition. Out of love. Noah reminded me that even broken hearts can still give. You said I was just the maid. Maybe I was. But I was also someone who believed you could heal. I hope you do. Take care of him. And if you ever think of me, don't be sorry. Just remember the sound of his laugh. That's enough. Lucia." Ethan read it twice, tears falling onto the page. He pressed the paper to his chest. Then he grabbed his keys. Because when a heart finally breaks, that's when it decides what kind of person you'll become. He drove for hours, past the city, down the highway, through the rain. He didn't know where she'd gone, only that he had to find her. By midnight, he pulled into a small church parking lot on the outskirts of Tacoma. A light glowed in one window. Inside, Lucia sat folding blankets in the church shelter. She looked up, startled. "Ethan?" He stepped forward, soaked from the rain. "You left." She set the blankets aside. You told me to remember my place. I was wrong. Lucia crossed her arms. You hurt me, Ethan. I know. His voice cracked. And I hate myself for it. He took a breath. But Noah, he heard me today. And the first thing he tried to say was your name. Her eyes filled with tears. He needs you, Ethan said. I need you. Lucia shook her head. You don't owe me anything. He stepped closer. This isn't about owing. It's about love. She looked away, shaking. Don't say that unless you mean it. He reached for her hand. I do. For a moment, neither moved. Then she exhaled, slow and trembling. You're a stubborn man, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You taught me that. They stood in silence, the church bells echoing in the distance. Finally, she said, If I come back, it's not as the maid. Ethan nodded. No, as family. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Then maybe it's time to go home. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's the beginning of goodbye, but only so you can find your way back. Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight? Comment below. It rained the morning they came home. The sky hung low over the lake, gray and calm. Lucia stood on the porch watching the water ripple. Ethan was beside her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Neither spoke at first. The quiet felt different now, softer, like forgiveness had weight. Noah's still asleep? Lucia asked. Ethan nodded. He had a big day yesterday. He's still getting used to hearing everything. She smiled. He deserves every sound in the world. Ethan looked at her. So do you. Lucia blushed and sipped her coffee. I'll settle for peace. He smiled faintly. That's harder to find than sound. They shared a small laugh, the kind that felt like home. Later that afternoon, Lucia helped Noah in the living room, guiding him as he practiced listening. Ball, she said softly. Ball, he echoed, the word imperfect but clear. Ethan stood in the doorway, hand over his mouth, tears in his eyes. Lucia looked up and smiled at him. He's learning fast. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Noah threw the ball and ran into his father's arms. Ethan lifted him high, laughing. You did it, buddy. Lucia turned away for a second, hiding her tears. For so long, this house had been silent. Now it was alive again. That night, after Noah went to bed, Ethan joined Lucia by the fire. The flames danced, warm and steady. I've been thinking, he said. About what? About us. About everything I broke. Lucia shook her head. You didn't break it alone. He looked at her. I've spent years trying to fix things with money, with logic. But the truth is, I didn't need to fix anything. I needed to listen. She smiled softly. You're learning. He chuckled. With the best teacher. Lucia stared into the fire. I used to think God stopped hearing me when Maria died. But then Noah came along. Maybe that was his answer all along. Not silence, but waiting. Ethan reached out, covering her hand with his. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever have again. What's that? Faith. Sometimes love doesn't heal your past. It gives you courage to face it. A week later, Ethan got an invitation in the mail. A memorial gala hosted by his late wife's old research foundation. He hadn't attended since her death. But this time felt different. He looked at Lucia. Come with me. She hesitated. I don't belong in that world. You belong wherever we are, he said gently. Lucia smiled. Then yes. The night of the gala, downtown Seattle shimmered with lights. Lucia wore a simple navy dress. Ethan couldn't look away. You look beautiful, he said quietly. She smiled. You clean up well too, Mr. Ward. They laughed. But when they entered the ballroom, Ethan's shoulders tensed. Every face, every camera flash reminded him of who he used to be, the man who built walls instead of bridges. Lucia noticed. She slipped her hand into his. You're not that man anymore. He exhaled, squeezing her hand. No, not anymore. Halfway through the evening, the host announced a tribute video for Ethan's wife. Photos flashed on a big screen, her smile, her lab, baby Noah in her arms. Ethan's eyes glistened. Lucia reached over, holding his hand tight. Then a clip played, one he'd never seen. His wife sitting in her lab, looking into the camera. "If you're watching this," she said, voice soft, "then I didn't make it. But Ethan, I know you. You'll try to blame yourself. Don't. Love him for both of us. And when you can't hear hope, find someone who can." Lucia's hand tightened around his. Ethan bowed his head, tears falling freely. After the video, he stepped outside for air. Lucia followed quietly. He stood under a string of lights, the city glowing behind him. "I spent so many years trying to build something for her," he said, voice low. "But she didn't want that. She wanted me to live." Lucia nodded. "Then live." He looked at her. "With you." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "If you'll have me." He reached for her face, brushing away a tear. "Always." They stood there for a moment, forehead to forehead, the city noise fading away. Sometimes courage isn't loud. It's the quiet choice to love again after loss. Back home, they found Noah asleep on the couch, clutching his toy elephant. The TV played softly, an old cartoon theme song humming through the speakers. Lucia laughed. He fell asleep to sound. Ethan smiled. "I never thought I'd see this." Lucia leaned her head on his shoulder. "You didn't just give him hearing, Ethan. You gave him a future." He looked down at her. "And you gave me one." They sat there in silence, the kind that felt full instead of empty. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows. Noah woke up and ran to them. "Morning," he shouted proudly. Lucia gasped, covering her mouth. "He said it." Ethan lifted him into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "Morning, buddy." Noah looked at Lucia. "Love you." Her knees went weak. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling him close. "I love you too." Ethan's eyes shone. He looked at Lucia, voice thick. "He's never said that before." She smiled through tears. "Now he can." That night, after putting Noah to bed, Ethan and Lucia sat outside by the lake. The moon shimmered on the surface, soft and steady. Ethan said quietly, "I keep thinking about her words. Find someone who can hear hope." Lucia smiled faintly. "She meant you'd need someone who listens with the heart." He looked at her. "Then I found her." She reached for his hand. "And I found home." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway. The morning light crept over the Callaway estate, soft and gold, spilling through the tall windows like forgiveness itself. Seattle was quiet after the storm. The rain had washed everything clean, the driveway, the garden, maybe even the wounds that had once felt too deep to heal. Lucia stood by the porch railing, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The lake shimmered beyond the trees. Somewhere inside, Ethan's laughter drifted down the hall, a sound that still stopped her heart every time. He could hear now, not perfectly, not all the time, but enough to know the rhythm of his own joy, the tone of his father's voice when he said "I love you," the tremble of Lucia's whisper when she told him "You're safe now." And that was enough. Richard stepped onto the porch behind her, the wooden boards creaking beneath his bare feet. For the first time, he wasn't wearing a suit. Just jeans and a faded University of Washington sweatshirt, proof that he was finally learning how to be ordinary. "You're up early," he said, voice rough with sleep. Lucia smiled faintly. "Couldn't help it. Haven't seen the sunrise here before." He leaned against the railing beside her, watching the sky turn peach and lavender. For a moment they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was full. When Richard finally looked at her, his eyes were soft. "Ethan's been asking for pancakes again. Said they taste better when you make them." Lucia laughed, shaking her head. "That's because I don't measure anything. I just pray and pour." He smiled, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Then I guess we'll pray for syrup." They both chuckled quietly, the kind of laughter that only comes after too many tears. Inside, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and butter. Ethan sat at the counter, signing excitedly as Lucia mixed the batter. Richard translated when she couldn't keep up. He says, Richard laughed. That he wants extra blueberries this time. Lucia grinned. Extra blueberries it is. Ethan nodded firmly, then reached for the spatula and started flipping pancakes with the seriousness of a scientist. Batter splattered onto the counter, and all three of them burst into laughter. For a moment, they looked like any other family on a Saturday morning, messy, loud, happy. When breakfast was done, Ethan ran outside to play with the dog, leaving Lucia and Richard at the sink. She turned off the faucet, drying her hands slowly. "He's changing so fast," she said. Richard nodded. "He's finally getting to be a kid." He hesitated, then added quietly, "Because of you." Lucia shook her head. "No, because of the truth." He met her eyes. "And because you were brave enough to find it." She looked away, fighting the sting of emotion. "I didn't feel brave, just tired of watching people suffer because of secrets." Richard reached for her hand. His fingers were warm, trembling a little. "You changed both our lives, Lucia. I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," she said softly. "You started listening." He exhaled, a shaky laugh leaving him. "Yeah, guess I finally learned that silence isn't peace. It's just hiding." Lucia smiled, eyes glistening. "And love is louder than any noise." Later that afternoon, the three of them drove out to the city park overlooking Puget Sound. Families were scattered across the grass, kids flying kites, dogs chasing frisbees. The air smelled like salt and popcorn from a nearby food truck. Ethan ran ahead, laughing, his small hearing device glinting in the sun. Lucia and Richard followed, side by side. He pointed toward the water. "He wants to show you something," Richard said, reading Ethan's signs. Ethan led them to a wooden bench facing the sound. From his backpack, he pulled out a small drawing pad. On the page was a sketch of three figures: one tall man, one woman, one boy, standing under a tree, their hands joined. Above them, he'd written a single word in careful letters: family. Lucia pressed a hand to her mouth. Richard swallowed hard. Ethan looked up, waiting for their reaction. Lucia crouched beside him. "It's perfect," she whispered. He grinned, signing slowly. "We sound happy." Tears filled her eyes. "We do," she said. "We really do." Richard knelt beside them, pulling his son into his arms. "I love you, buddy," he murmured. Ethan's small hands rose, touching his father's lips, feeling the vibration of each word. Lucia turned away, letting them have that moment. The wind swept through her hair, carrying the sound of seagulls and laughter and something else, a peace she hadn't felt in years. As the sun began to dip, they headed back to the car. Richard opened the passenger door for her. It was such a simple gesture, but it made her chest tighten. Halfway home, Ethan dozed off in the back seat, his head resting against the window. The radio played softly, an old country song crackling through the speakers. Lucia looked out at the road, the evergreens flickering past. "Do you ever think about starting over?" she asked quietly. Richard kept his eyes on the road. "Every day." "And," he smiled, "I think I already have." She turned toward him. The golden light of sunset painted his face, and she saw the man beneath the armor, the father who had finally stopped running from the sound of his own heart. "I don't know where this goes," he said, voice low, "but I'd like to find out with you." Lucia felt her throat tighten. "That's the first thing you've said that didn't sound like a business plan." He laughed softly. "Good. I'm tired of negotiations." She smiled, leaning back, watching the skyline come into view. Seattle glowed in the distance, neon and glass and hope. A few weeks later, the Callaway mansion felt different. Lived in. Warmer. There were toys scattered in the living room, art supplies on the dining table, and music, real music, drifting from the speakers. Ethan had discovered a love for the guitar, strumming out uneven notes that somehow sounded like healing. Lucia stood in the doorway listening. Every chord was slightly off, but it didn't matter. It was proof that life didn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Richard joined her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "He's getting good," he murmured. "Getting loud." she teased. He grinned. I like it loud. They stood there, wrapped in the sound of their imperfect, miraculous little world. That evening, they took a walk down the driveway, past the hydrangeas that lined the path. The air was cool, the kind that hinted at autumn. Lucia stopped halfway down, looking back at the house. It doesn't feel empty anymore, she said. It isn't, Richard replied. Not since you walked in. She met his gaze, the words catching in her chest. You really mean that? I do. For a heartbeat, the world went still. The soft hum of crickets, the faint breeze, the fading daylight wrapping them in gold. Then, without planning to, Richard leaned in. The kiss was gentle, steady, and real. No grand music, no perfect timing. Just two people finally brave enough to choose love. When they pulled apart, Lucia's eyes shimmered. Took you long enough. He smiled. Some lessons are worth the wait. Later that night, as stars bloomed over the city, Lucia tucked Ethan into bed. He signed something before closing his eyes. Good night, Mom. She froze, her breath catching. He hadn't called her that before. Richard, standing in the doorway, saw the tears spill down her cheeks. He mouthed the words she couldn't say. He means it. Lucia sat beside the boy, brushing his hair from his forehead. Good night, sweetheart, she whispered. Ethan smiled in his sleep. When she turned off the lamp, the room filled with a soft, living quiet. Not the silence of loneliness, but of peace. Back on the porch, Lucia and Richard stood beneath the night sky. The lake shimmered like glass, reflecting the moon. Somewhere inside, a faint strum of guitar strings carried through the air. Richard took her hand. You know, he said, for years I thought silence was safety. Now I realize it was just waiting for the right sound. Lucia looked up at him, smiling through tears. And what sound is that? He squeezed her hand gently. Us. Inside the house, Ethan played one last chord on his guitar, slightly off-key, but beautiful. The sound drifted through the halls, across the porch, into the night. Lucia leaned her head against Richard's shoulder. The music faded, but the peace remained. For the first time in years, the Calloway home wasn't silent. It was alive. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? Yellow Heart, drop a heart in the comments if this story hit you. And tell me, what does love at last mean to you?